Jody here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, on my channel I talk about Broadway books and television, and in today's video I'm going to be giving a spoiler-free review on the latest book that I have read. So as per usual, I go over certain things in my spoiler-free reviews, such as what the book is about, if I've read from this author before or not, my thoughts on the book, my star rating, and if this is a book I would recommend reading. So without any further ado, let's get on to today's spoiler-free book review, and that would be for the book This Summer Will Be Different by Carley Fortune. So This Summer Will Be Different is about Lucy, who is planning a trip with her best friend Bridget to visit Bridget's hometown of Prince Edward Island. Lucy is so excited to have Bridget show her around her hometown and where she grew up. The day, though, that Lucy and Bridget are supposed to leave, Bridget ends up having to delay her flight. Bridget tells Lucy to just go on ahead without her and that she'll meet up with her there later. When Lucy gets to the island, she is completely memorized by the idyllic beach town. She wanders around a bit before heading to Bridget's childhood home, where the two of them will be staying while on their visit there. Comes across this restaurant as she's walking around and decides to go in. She goes to sit at the bar, and behind it is an extremely handsome bartender. Lucy and the bartender start to flirt, and the two of them later then end up going back to his place. Lucy spends the night there as well as the next morning. The next morning, as Lucy and the bartender are talking, an unfortunate realization dawns on them both, which is that they actually already know each other even though they've never met. And also how Lucy doesn't have to travel much further to get to Bridget's childhood home, as she is in fact already there. The home where Bridget's brother, Felix, as it so happens, is also currently living in at the moment. The decision is immediately made that what Lucy and Felix did the night before will never ever happen again. That turns out to be easier said than done, as each and every single time that Lucy and Felix see one another, they end up doing the same thing that they did the first day they met, time and time again. But the last time that Lucy sees Felix, something happens that ends up changing everything. Then on the heels of Bridget's wedding, Bridget ends up fleeing back home suddenly. Lucy has no idea what's going on with Bridget, but whatever it is, she knows that she has to be by her best friend's side. Lucy then ends up going back to the one place she thought she would never ever go again, Prince Edward Island. She means seeing Felix again, the one person who Lucy has desperately tried to stay away from, but keeps getting drawn back to time and time again, despite her best efforts not to. This is the first book by Carley Fortune that I read, but it certainly won't be the last. I have the two other books that Carley Fortune has written at the moment, and while I know so many love her first book, Every Summer After, I have to say I'm a bit more intrigued to read Meet Me at the Lake first, which from my understanding is a book that's not quite as universally loved as her first book, but as someone who isn't as critical when it comes to books as others may be, curious what I'll think of the book compared to what others have thought. So now for my thoughts on This Summer Will Be Different. I absolutely love this book from start to finish, so I have lots to say. For one, I love Carley Fortune's writing. The story was beautifully written. The writing had such heart, passion, emotion in every word from the very first to the very last page. This was a story that you couldn't help but fall in love with and become invested in as you were reading it, thanks to the author's incredible writing and way of storytelling. Two, I loved Lucy and Felix's love story. Their love story was one that went on quite the journey, spanning several years. The connection between these two characters was undeniable from the very first moment they met. There was this instant spark between the two that deep down they both felt, but despite their connection, chemistry, and attraction to one another, Lucy was always hesitant to allow herself to truly fall for Felix, continuing to tell herself that what they were doing is just having some fun, but nothing more than that. There are reasons for which the book explains as to why Lucy feels so passionately against pursuing a relationship with Felix beyond fun, because of how it might affect her friendship with Bridget. Bridget is Lucy's best friend and means the world to her, and so even though Lucy knows that she loves Felix, that she's loved him this whole time, she continually pushes her feelings for him away because she doesn't want to do anything that might jeopardize her and Bridget's friendship. I thought the patience that Felix had during this time when Lucy didn't want to admit her feelings for him was truly incredible. Felix is just such a genuinely good guy who loves Lucy so much that he's willing to wait and stay until she's ready to admit to herself that they are and have been in love since the very first moment they met all those years ago. I thought the author overall did a really amazing job writing Lucy and Felix's relationship and how it evolved over time, from the two of them having this instant chemistry and attraction to one another, to both of them eventually coming to terms with how this thing between them wasn't ever only just about fun, but how it was also about love. 3. I love the characters in the book, especially Lucy and Felix, who went on such an emotional journey in the book, not only with each other, but also within themselves as well. Over the course of the story, Lucy and Felix really grew, evolved, and took risks. They were honest with themselves about what they really wanted to do with their lives, how they wanted to live their lives, and ultimately who they wanted to spend their lives with. Also, really loved how Lucy's storyline about what she wanted to do played out in the book. When the story first starts, Lucy is unhappy with where her life is, especially when it comes to her career. She feels obligated to take the path that her parents would most likely approve of, and in doing so, she spends her days at a job that she gets nothing out of. Lucy eventually quits her job, not a spoiler, and pursues her passion of flowers, working at her aunt's flower shop. I really admired the courage that it took for Lucy to take that risk, a risk where at the end of the day she didn't know how things were going to turn out. I love the setting of the book, specifically the parts that took place on Prince Edward Island, Bridget and Felix's hometown. I thought the author did an amazing job describing the island, a place where you're never far away from the sand and ocean and the salt filling the air all around you. The setting was truly like another character in the book. The story at times was incredibly atmospheric, because of how everything in the story was so well described and detailed. That Lucy arrives on the island, she feels a sense of calmness and peace that she's never felt before in her whole entire life, as though she can finally breathe and just relax. Lucy feels more herself and more at home on the island than she's ever felt anywhere else she's ever been before. In the city where Lucy works and lives, she can sometimes get overwhelmed, allowing herself to get lost in her work, whereas the island has the opposite effect on her, being a place for Lucy where she can take it easy, slow down, recharge, and clear her mind. So those are my thoughts in the book. Now for my star rating. I love this book so much, as I'm sure you can clearly tell. Not only is this one of the best books that I've read this year, but it's also now one of my favorite romances that I've simply ever read. So with all that being said, my star rating for This Summer Will Be Different was that this was definitely more than a 5-star book for me. It was 6 stars. So now for my recommendation. I would say if you're looking for an incredibly well-written love story that is heart, passion, and oh so much chemistry, I would highly recommend reading the romance This Summer Will Be Different by Carley Fortune. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope I helped you discover a new book today along the way as well. And until next time, bye.